Violence Assessment Part 2. Welcome to the second part of the Violence Assessment and Prevention course. My name is Kira and I am Raphael Burchard's voice in the online world. Before we move to this part, I would highly recommend accessing Part 1 of Violence Assessment and Prevention. This will give you the background to this part. In this part, we are going to analyze the different origins of violence and divide types of violence. Let's start. Violence is defined by the World Health Organization as the intentional use of physical force or power, threatened or actual, against oneself, another person, or against a group or community, which either results in or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment, or deprivation. Domestic violence, also called domestic abuse, includes cohesive control, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse in couple relationships or between family members. Unfortunately, these days violence can be found everywhere. If you know what you are looking for, you will observe signs that can give you an insight into what is happening. Every day everyone is coming across several people who scan you for a potential target. If you are unfortunate enough to become their target, and you are forced to use physical self-defense, you have already failed to protect yourself. As discussed in the first part, if you get involved in physical self-defense, it will be on you to prove in front of the jury, if you are lucky enough to be still among us, that your actions were necessary and reasonable. This might cost you money, time, stress, a job, depleted savings, broken relationships, and physical and mental damage. An extreme situation might cost your life or the life of others. Let's analyze the next slide. On this slide, we can see Maslow's pyramid of needs. I am finding this model very useful. And when discussing the origins of violence, this model gives a clear guide to why some individuals can be prone to use physical force. Understanding this will help us to build our defense. The lowest part refers to basic physiological needs. If individuals lack air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and sex, these individuals might use force to get what they need. Of course, not everyone will use force if they are hungry or not rested enough. But let's consider the below situations. Situation 1. You are enjoying a nice swimming time in the ocean, and suddenly you are caught by something big and you are drawn under the water. You are in pain and you are starving for air. Situation 2. You are suddenly in the middle of a military conflict between two countries, and you have small children under your care. Shortly after the war began, all supplies are gone, with no food or clean water. You are staying in a regularly bombarded building with the risk of everything collapsing on top of you. Situation 3. You have not been sleeping for a long time. Your newborn is crying all the time. You have no idea what to do. You are sleep deprived and this is an ongoing issue for weeks, maybe months now. Situation 5. You got robbed on a trip to an exotic country, and you were left on a street only in your undergarments. Police in this region are absent or completely uninterested in your situation, and they do not speak your language anyway. There is no easy way out of this. How prone you might be to use force in the above situation. Everyone can be presented with a situation when the use of violence will become favorable. The less moral person is, the easier it is for this person to choose violence as a viable option. Let's move to the layer above. This layer refers to safety needs, where a person has all or most of the basic needs met and the violent behavior is driven from different places. This layer is divided into personal security, employment, resources, health, property. Personal security refers to one being attacked, physically, verbally, or emotionally. It might be a typical self-defense situation. Employment. Recent news can give you an example of a former employee breaking into a former employer causing a shooting spare. Losing employment is for some not only a place to work, but sometimes losing a face, status, and income, leading to a shift in basic needs. Resources. Some people might feel it is not fair that they do not have the newest iPhone, and others have. In their mind, it is fair for them to take what they want. Health. Person who is addicted to substances will do almost anything, including violence, to get money for another dose. Property. We as human beings are very territorial, and we tend to be very protective over our possessions. As I stated before, not everyone will refer to violence in the same circumstances. This depends on personal morality, as well as viable options that will be discussed later on. The next level refers to love and belonging, in other words, social security. And this layer divides on friendship, love, intimacy, family, sense of connection. On this level, we're going to observe violence in the form of domestic abuse is where one person is exercising control over another person, where one of the tools used by the perpetrator is physical violence. We human beings are social creatures, and again we tend to protect what is ours and us, against others in them. The family connection often is enough to feel the strong need to defend ourselves from others. This can extend beyond family ties to social groups, formal, such as football support groups, or informal, such as gangs and crime groups. On this level, violence can be exercised by several assailants and can be extremely dangerous. Let's look at the higher level. Esteem. This level divides itself onto respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. This level reaches beyond me in the group and focuses on me as an individual. The violence on this level can resurface in the form of assassins, seek recognition, status, and respect in the worst imaginative way. For people seeking revenge, violence is to restore a sense of self as a strong, respected individual. Some individuals will do anything to keep their freedom, not only physical freedom but as well freedom to be in the physical area, doing what they want, controlling whatever they want, and who they want. The top of the pyramid of needs is self-actualization. On the first sight, we could think, how a person who is reaching to be the best he or she can be would harm anyone. And yes, the answer is in the question. Some people self-realizing themselves by making a suit from human skin, or by keeping another person alive for as long as they can, while cutting them to pieces. The concept of self-actualization can work both ways. We can be perfect in doing good or bad. Be mindful that the content of the subject is much deeper. This presentation is an introduction. The pyramid of needs is giving us information about what drives people towards violence. The next slide will divide the types of violence based on the pyramid of needs. The first type of violence is predatory violence. This type of violence can be driven from all layers of Maslow's pyramid of needs. The single predator wants something: food, cash, sex, revenge, status, and regaining power and control. This predator will select the time of the day to perform the act. If the predator wants sex, it will be usually late at night. If the predator wants recognition and to be seen by as many people as he can, it might be the middle of the day. Location: to steal something and disappear in the crowd. The predator can use public, busy locations. To regain control over the victim in a domestic abuse situation, the predator would use a hidden place, or the victim's home. What kind of attack the predator will use? This will depend on the predator itself, on its abilities. If the predator is devastated by addiction, individual, direct physical force might not be favorable due to lack of strength, but intimidation with contaminated sharps can do the job. If the predator is ex-military personnel with appropriate hand combat training, the use of violence can be much different. The last element is the consequences of the attack from the predator's point of view. The predator can succeed and get what he wants, or fail and lose. Loss is an important element in judging engagement. What he has to lose: prey, health, life, freedom, status, respect, self-esteem, and more. The predator is assessing if the potential failure is acceptable or favorable. For example, one is attempting to steal the person's wallet. He selected the person who has won, selected time, place and tactics. The consequence is getting caught and processed by the police. Sometimes the negative consequence might be favorable. For example, the predator is planning to assassinate a famous figure. The probability of success is low, but the probability of being arrested is high. The consequence is favorable. Being caught will bring the fame of killing a famous person. Let's move to the next slide. Group predatory violence. This type of violence is driven by two lower layers of the pyramid of needs. ANS is mainly connected with gaining goods or money, but sometimes can be connected with self-actualization and esteem, where a group of predators will work together to assassinate a target or gain status recognition. In this type O violence, the predators will work in a group. This group will have a structure where members have specific roles to perform. This group will have as well identified chain of command and an identified leader. This group acts to gain goods or to achieve a specific goal, such as the task force in the military being put together to complete specified tasks, or a crime group that was put together to commit organized robbery. The time and the place of the crime being committed will depend on the goal and group skills. For example, a group needs money. The plan is to execute a robbery of the petrol station. This plan requires little planning and skills. On the other side, planning and execution of the armed convoy robbery will require a different set of skills and equipment. The tactics as well will highly depend on members' skills and access to the resources, and might range from intimidation to lethal violence. The group during the planning phase must take into consideration possible failure. Being arrested is highly unfavorable. The next type of violence will be driven from the love and belonging middle area of Maslow's pyramid. Social violence. The first type of social violence is alpha dog positioning. This social behavior is often visible in any group where dominance is forming or being challenged. The time of the day and location of the violence occurring will dictate the social group activity time and usual location or locations. For example, a group that is active during the night and is gathering in a pub will conclude any dominance challenges in these locations where several people will witness this dominance game. The alpha dog positioning game can be lethal in the crime groups, but it is not lethal in more civilized settings like fun or supporters groups. The consequences of violent behavior are almost always favorable even if the person is arrested. Arguing with the police officers will make his act complete as the dominant dog in the pack. The next type of violence is social group positioning. The goal of this type of behavior is to establish order in the group. One or few members were actions not as the group expects the members to behave, and the group is restoring order by using force. The time and location as well will be related to the time and location. The group is usually active, but the punishment can be as well executed in a secluded location. The consequences of the act are almost always favorable as the members of the group will not expose any other member to outside authorities such as the police. The order in the group is restored. The next type of violence is group bonding. This type of violence is highly dangerous to the general public. The goal of this activity is to bound the ties of the group members, and one of the activities is causing as much damage to the other people that do not belong to the group or property as possible. For example, the group might initiate new members by committing acts of violence. Another example is when group members will demonstrate violent behavior against a person, persons, or property to gain respect. The group can commit acts of violence at any time of the day or night depending on the group activity and goals. The place will be identified by assessing group needs and abilities. On the next slide, we are going briefly look into the domestic violence. Women's Aid in Scotland defines domestic abuse as an incident or pattern of incidents. These can be committed by a partner, ex-partner, family member or carer. Domestic abuse is experienced mostly by women and perpetrated by men. Often domestic abuse is well covered by the perpetrator, but careful observation can unravel and detect this behavior. Domestic abuse can include, but is not limited to, the following behaviors: coercive control, intimidation, degradation, and isolation, controlling with the use of threat of physical, sexual, and emotional violence, psychical or emotional abuse, financial abuse, minimizing and blaming, stalking both online and physically, and digital abuse. This subject is vast, so here I am pointing out only a few elements to raise awareness on this subject, and I am recommending further reading. I recommend Why Does He Do That by Lundy Bancroft. Now it is the time to experiment and to be a criminal for a moment. This will give you different perspectives and will help you to use your judgment to avoid violence. But first, how do violent people think when selecting a target? Fists. What do I want or need? Money, personal possession, items, satisfied my needs, display my anger to impose compliance, position me in the group. Once the predator has the answer to the first question, it is time to think. Who has what I need, or who can provide what I need or want? What is the age of my victim? What is the sex of my victim? How my target will present? Strong? Weak? Sick? Should my target be rich or poor? Am I going to benefit from this target? Is the target famous? Once the predator is satisfied with the above answers, it is time to move to the next element, where I can reach my target. Is it a public place or remote? What will work best for me? Is the site restricted? Am I able to reach my target at this location? Any escape routes? Can I hide from potential pursuit? Or do I want to be arrested? Is there other place that I will be able to access easily to get what I want from the victim? What time of the day or night will suit me best to do what I want? Once these questions are answered, the predator needs to consider what tactics I am going to use to get what I want. Verbal intimidation, physical intimidation with use of weapon, or without, sudden attack to overwhelm the target, kill, cause unconsciousness. Am I going to use manipulation, and what weapon I am intend to use? No weapon, knife, bricks, stones, sticks, bat, gun. And the last question, if the victim is not cooperations, how far I am willingly to go to get what I want. Run, to avoid detection and being arrested, or I am not able to confront the victim physically. Increase intimidation, from verbal to the physical. Should I consider weapon, physical violence? If the target is not cooperating, I am going to cause physical damage. Lethal violence, I will kill to get what I want if the victim is not cooperating. The perpetrator needs to consider consequences of the act if the act will fail and the person will be caught. The consequence can be favorable. By committing this, I will be famous. My name will be as famous as the person I killed. Not favorable. I will end up in prison and I will lose my freedom, money, time, status. Now it is time to go through the training scenarios. When you are moving through the next slide, pause the video and consider the following questions. Scenario 1. I need cash for drugs. A person is addicted to drugs, and his body and mind are devastated by prolonged substance misuse. He is living on the streets and has little to lose. Who is the target? Where he or she is going to commit the crime? When will the crime likely happen? How the crime will happen, and what tactics likely will be used? How far the assailant will go if the tactics will not work for him or her? Pause and record your thoughts, as you likely concluded this person will pursue a target who is an elderly person, preferably female, or a teenager. The attack will happen in a secluded location, a side alley. The time will depend on the topography. If a densely populated area, evening or morning time. If this is a sparsely populated area, the attack may happen during the day. As the assailant is devastated by the addiction, the tactic may be intimidation, with a contaminated needle, or intimidating behavior. The assailant has little to lose, so if the intimidation will not work, the escalation can move towards stabbing with the needle or using another weapon. Consequences: if successful, will gain access to the goods or cash for the drugs. If fail and get caught, jail time, with access to a warm room, regular meals, medical attention and a game box. It is a win-win situation. I hope now you have a better understanding of what we are looking for. Let us look at the other scenario. Scenario 2. Let's do some damage. A group of youngsters trying to show off in front of the other group members. The group's purpose is to dominate and cause damage in any way possible. Who is the target? Where they are going to commit the crime? When will the crime likely happen? How the crime will happen, and what tactics likely will be used? How far the assailant will go if the tactics will not work for him or her? Pause and record your thoughts, as you likely concluded anyone can become a target. Sometimes the bigger and stronger target, the better. The group can attack at any location from where they have an escape route or plan. The time can be varied depending on what time the group is operating. The tactics of the attack will be the use of physical damage to a person, persons or property. Violent behavior can escalate and cause death. This type of behavior can be an initiation of the new group members or group bonding behavior. Scenario 3. I want to show how strong I am in front of my pals. The assistant is a young adult who is trying to impress his pals. Who is the target? Where he or she is going to commit the crime? When will the crime likely happen? How the crime will happen, and what tactics likely will be used? How far the assailant will go if the tactics will not work for him or her? Pause and record your thoughts, as you likely concluded the target might be another young male adult, who is in the eyes of the assistant weaker target. This type of attack can occur during night lifetimes, nightclubs, etc. The time of the night, possibly when everyone had already had a few drinks. The tactic usually is not lethal, and is similar to sparring and competition. Escalation is possible, and the person, due to the likely influence of substances, might reach for an improvised weapon. Judgment about consequences is clouded at this point, and if the assailant is going too far with the behavior, his pools might intervene and break the fight. Scenario 4. I want to rape and sexually use another person, female, without her consent. The assailant is a middle-aged adult who is sexually aroused by resistance and sexual violence. Who is the target? Where he is going to commit the crime? When will the crime likely happen? How the crime will happen, and what tactics likely will be used? How far the assailant will go if the tactics will not work for him? Pause and record your thoughts, as you concluded the likely target will be a female at any age. The likely time is late at night, during the weekend when the party time is over and people are often under influence of substances, posing a perfect target. The location is a park, a deserted side street, derelict building. The assistant will likely use physical restraint to enforce compliance, and the use of weapons possible. If the victim resists, high chances of escalation that can result in death. Let us move to another exercise. Scenario 5. I want to kill and become famous. I want to be as famous as this actor. The assailant is ex-military with a long history of service, but as well a long history of mental health issues. Who is the target? Where he or she is going to commit the crime? When will the crime likely happen? How the crime will happen, and what tactics likely will be used? How far the assailant will go if the tactics will not work for him or her? Pause and record your thoughts. In this scenario, the target is a famous actor. The place will be dictated based on observation, targets, routines, plans, meetings, travel plans, work, social events and so on. The place should be preferably public with lots of witnesses. The time will be dictated by the selected event. The tactics, if possible, might be a handgun from close proximity. The assailant wants to be famous, so there is no escape plan, wants to be caught, and become a star as his victim. At this point, I believe you have a level of understanding of how criminals or assailants might think, and as you reflect on your daily behavior and your routines, you can start building a safety plan and self-defense plan to protect yourself and your close ones. I am dedicating the next part 3 of violence assessment and prevention, to how to use non-physical self-defense in action. See you next time. My name is Kira, and I am Raphael Burchard's voice in the online world.